compulsions are many orders of magnitude stronger than addiction. If you think of what's a habit, you have a habit, okay, that you can break a habit with a certain amount of effort. Well, how easy is it compared to breaking a real bona fide addiction? Well, it's pretty easy. Some habits easier than others, but the same thing with a compulsion versus an addiction. It's that much harder. And it becomes literally hardwired in the brain.
Jason, how did you find Carnivore?
Well, Dave, my story, let me preface the actual story by saying, we always want to be somehow special. I feel I'm special. Everybody thinks they're special. And I look back at how I got here and I think, well, there's nothing special about it at all. The details are unique, but I'm not. So I'm going to dive into something that was emotional for me that got me started in a new line. I'd been married for 37 years. A delightful woman. We remained friends, so it's all a good story. If you want me to bash her, I'm afraid I can't. She's just a good girl. Anyhow, so for 37 years, that's almost 4 decades, my entire adult life. And so with that divorce, things changed for me significantly. And I started looking at things, I can't say I was in a rut. I wasn't. As we discussed off camera, she and I lived in Vietnam. We lived in Thailand for a total of 11 years, doing different things. She had her business and I had business. So it wasn't a rut, but you do get into where you're doing habitual things. And part of that habit for me was just eating whatever was put on the table. And we had a wonderful housekeeper, which you can afford when you live in places like Vietnam or the Philippines, where I am right now. Anyway, they told me what to eat, and I'm a happy camper, and I ate it. But then when we got back to the States in 2016, I found out that I was at a very high level pre-diabetic, and the doc was a young guy fresh out of school, said, "Don't worry about it. We'll just keep an eye on it." And I said, "Okay." And we were good to go. I was already on statins. I have a family history of heart disease. But okay, so that's where it was. No excitement. There was nothing on my part that said, red flag. Then the divorce came. And so I wound up changing just things. First of all, I had to start cooking. And so I started learning that. And one of the things that bumped into my life, kind of come in a sideways deal, was I read a book called The Methuselah Effect. And it was written by an economist. Now, his deal was looking at bio companies that are dealing with and working in the framework of longevity. So I read the book and oh my goodness, I got all excited. And so immediately, because I thought, well, gee, I could live a long time if this stuff works, right? And I'm not trying to promote it, although it's a pretty darn good idea. So I changed my diet because I realized, one, I was fairly overweight again, and I'd been overweight off and on. I've been obese a couple of times in my life. I've got that pretty well nailed. It's not a problem for me anymore. We can talk about that later, but I needed to lose some weight. And I knew I was already pre-diabetic and creeping up to that magic number. And so I did cold turkey. One day, I just got plastic bags and went through everything. If it was seed oil, it went out. If it was processed, it went out. If it was sugar, it went out. And even if it had any sugar in it, it was in the trash. I got to tell you, Dave, I almost cried when I threw out my bottles of ketchup. It's like, oh, but okay, you made the decision, you're going to go with it. So I did that, and oh my goodness, just that alone really, really made a difference. Now, I wasn't low carb, I wasn't any of that kind of stuff. I was just no sugar, no processed foods, no seed oils. Made a big, big difference. Moving forward through the ramifications of the divorce is, selling the house and what have you. So I wound up thinking, all right, I've been living south, Southern California, Southern Texas, Southern Vietnam, Southern Thailand for all of my life. I'm going to go north, and I bought a log cabin up in the middle, very literally the middle of Montana. and up in the mountains, and it's off grid, and it was dilapidated in real bad shape. So I spent the summer rebuilding this cabin. A lot of outdoor work. I felt great. I felt so good. And, I was down to my fighting weight and muscular and all that good stuff, and I'm in my late 60s, and I'm thinking, gee, pat myself on the back, a little bit of this kind of stuff, because, hey, life is good, right? And I'm emotionally, mentally doing, processing, and things are going well. And I, of course, because I'm new to Montana, I get a new doctor. The doctor says, oh, we need to put you back on those statins, because I quit taking them. I said, no, they make me feel bad. He said, no, but we have to. I said, no, we don't have to. And so we got into this tussle. And so he, a good guy, real good guy, he said, I'll tell you what, if I can show you with enough tests that you need to take these, will you do the testing? Well, that's reasonable, sure. So I did. Turned out I had, at that point, a very high, it's called Agatston score, which tells you how much calcification you have in your heart arteries. Well, it was really, really high, and put me up in the 95th percentile of going to have a heart event, and in the next 5 years. 95th percentile. You start looking at that stuff and go, oh, well, what does that really mean? Well, it's the number one killer. 700,000+ people in the United States die of it every year. And it's something like 17 million people worldwide die of this. And so you start to say, well, okay, this is serious. Well, what causes it? Well, the thing that I have, which is calcification in the arteries and on the heart, is the number one cause of the number one killer. So, I didn't say, oh gosh, I said, oh my, and off I went. And so I started researching it, because the doc wanted to put me on statins and what have you. So this took 6 months worth of testing, what have you. So I said, no, there's got to be more to it. So I found the low carb, high fat diet, and did that for a while, went low carb, high fat. And I heard more about the carnivore. I say more because before I bought the cabin, I'd been listening to Ken Berry, and I bought his book, what have you, Dr. Ken Berry. And I was watching him, and this was when they had the new baby, right? And I was watching an episode, and he had already said he was going carnivore. He was going full meat. And I didn't like that idea. This is where I'm very normal. I didn't like it. I was resistant. Now here I am dying, right? But I'm real resistant to it. And he says he's gone carnivore. And then later on, I watched one of his episodes, which is significant because he had the new baby. And he had rerun one of his old episodes. I said, fake, you're a fake. And I got all upset, mad at the guy, like I knew him, like he was my brother-in-law or something. And I unsubscribed, I'll show you, I'm going to unsubscribe. And then, lo and behold, here a year and a half later, I've got heart disease that I have had for 30 years and didn't know it. And so I learned more and more about it. Well, I went back and resubscribed to Ken Berry and folks like you, and I learned a ton about carnivore. And then, so I went from high fat, low carb to straight carnivore, almost lion. I do drink coffee. And so other than that, it's lion diet. And it's been that way for almost 2 years now. So that's what got me there was, first of all, I found out that I was pre-diabetic on the road to diabetes, and the doc said it was okay. And I said, okay. But then I woke up one day and said, this is not good. And when I read the book, The Methuselah Effect, there was a chapter in there, and the guys went through the actuary tables with insurance people, because they said, what would happen if we didn't die of old age? So the insurance people have the way to figure that out. And they said, well, the average age then, because there will still be suicide, the murder, car accidents, there'll be these other things. Well, the average age would be 900 years. Yeah, 900 years. I lived with that for a few days, thought about it, thought, you know what? I could do that. I mean, if it happens, I'm not suggesting that it's okay, but if it was to happen, that would be so cool. So that's when I got engaged. No, that's the details, but the thing of it is you talk to people, well, why did you quit smoking, or why did you do this or that? Well, because they had a heart attack, or they had an event, some kind of an event that triggered them. And I would like to say I'm so special and wonderful that I did all this. No, I had to have an event, and it was a series of events, big events in my life: a divorce, after decades, a finding out that I was on my road to diabetic, and my best friend at the time had diabetes and all the issues, and then heart disease. And the last thing I didn't tell you on the heart disease, I was in the 95th percentile likely to have that heart event. Well, it turns out that if you have that type of a heart event, as they call it, 50% of the people die. That's their first symptom, is death. See, I was out there digging holes and putting in septic tanks and all that. I felt great, but I was on death's edge and didn't know it. And so once I found out how the heart attack actually occurs, and it has nothing to do with all the things that we've talked about, cholesterol over the years and all that. Cholesterol is like number 13 on the top 10 of what causes heart attacks. Yeah, it's there, but it's like way, way down. So these big events scared me, and I responded. And that's how I found Carnivore. And I've been singing his praises ever since.
Wow.
Thoroughly love it.
So I'm very interested to know, after 2 years, I mean, what do you know the status of your arteries and what's going on with the heart?
Well, I'm going to have to tell you, you'll have to invite me back in 6 months. The reason for that is I know exactly what's going on with my diabetes. It's completely gone. Has been for a long, long time. But to get the information on the arteries, you have to have basically a CAT scan. It's called a CT scan, and you have to have somebody who can read it. And I was waiting when I was in Vietnam because it was time to come back and do it. And I said, okay, when I get to the Philippines, they have good doctors, they have good hospitals and all of that. And I got here and got the CT scan, and they did the wrong thing. And then when I went to the cardiologist, they didn't even know what I was talking about. They had no idea. So I just simply can't. And I'm going back to the States in June, and I'll spend enough time and I'll get the CT scan. I'll send you the information. So,
I mean, as far as, also, congratulations on the diabetes.
yeah, thanks.
Congratulations on getting that under control. And I mean, when we started this call, before we went live, you were talking about you just finished a ribeye. Everything's going well with your eating. You're feeling good. How are you eating day to day? Like, was that your first meal? We're in the afternoon now. Was that your first meal?
Right. No, it was my second meal. I had breakfast, and right now, and again, I'm going to make that earlier comment. I'm nobody special, because I've gone through fasting. I've gone through intermittent fasting. I've done long-term fasting. It's kind of a rotating thing with me. So right now I'm back on intermittent fasting, and I eat breakfast 7 o'clock in the morning ish, 7, 8, maybe 9, depends on what's going on, depending on my schedule. I have a work schedule, so I have to kind of work around that. And then I eat lunch. Now today, typically I'll come home and I'll eat lunch after I go to the gym. I'm in the gym from 11 to 12 pretty much every day, 5 days a week. Then I'll come home and have that steak and or whatever meat it is. I do, because I'm in the Philippines, we eat a lot of pork, and I like it. So, and the steak here tends to be not very fatty. I said it was ribeye, and it is. And it's Brazilian ribeye. You can't get a ribeye off of a cow here. A Philippine ribeye, there's no fat on it at all. The cows here have no fat. They're very lean animals. You see them out on the side of the road. And go,
I'm just thinking about runway model cows or something.
Yes, exactly. They're tall and lanky. Yes, runway models. That's good. They're Brahma. They're the ones with the hump on the back, and I probably know more about the Brahma bull, Brahma cow than I should. I bought one. I own a cow, so she's giving birth next month. So right now I have 1.5 cows. Next month I'll have two.
Oh wow! Oh, congratulations!
It's just a fluke. One of the funny things you do, when you're expat, you get into crazy stuff.
So, like, your cow is on the property you're on now? Like, how big is the property
No,
you're
no,
on?
my cow is at my girlfriend's grandparents' house, and it's especially funny because for Americans, the standard suburban lot is 1/7 of an acre, maybe 1/4 of an acre, all the way up to 1/2. And if you have a half acre, that's a really big lot. Up in Montana, as soon as you get out of town, everything gets huge. So according to all my neighbors, I have a postage stamp. My place is 47 acres, and but I don't have any cows. And it turns out in Montana, where I live, 47 acres will support one cow. That's all it'll support. It's just you get a spring growth, and then you don't have any more grass. So although it is cattle country, that's where most of your cattle will come from, up in that area. Anyhow, they put them out there to pasture, and my property gets grazed by the local herd. And so, but in Montana, I was what they call all hat, big cowboy hat, all hat and no cattle. So here I'm all cattle and no hat. It's just kind of silly. But yeah, on the grandparents' house, they have about, I'd say an acre and a half, and that will support up to 10 cows. It's amazing how lush it is here. Yeah. So the other cow lives down there, and there's somebody, a caretaker, that comes and takes care of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I stand next to it to get my picture taken.
So, when you said the cows at the grandparents' house, I was like, I'm giggling because she's at the grandparents' house, I'm just imagining the cow sitting in the living room reading a magazine or something.
Yeah. Well, it's
Remote
not
control.
quite that rustic, but yeah, it's not that far. So
Um,
life in the
and
Philippines, interesting.
how is being a carnivore in the Philippines as far as the way people might look at you? Like, well, that's a bit strange, or it's just kind of, oh yeah, okay, we all like meat.
Well, they have a saying here that rice is life. And so that you can start off with that one. Rice is life. And so when anybody who's Filipino learns that I am carnivore, they say, okay, but can you have, and they'll list rice, or they'll list bananas, or they'll say whatever. So, no, that's a plant. I don't eat plants. Okay, fine. How about broccoli? Can you have broccoli? It's like the old movie, oh golly, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That goes back a ways, and they're in the kitchen, and he's being introduced to the mother-in-law and the family, and he was vegetarian, and she says, "Oh, you're vegetarian. You don't eat no meat." And he goes, "No, no meat, no meat, no meat, no problem. I'll fix you lamb." So it's that way here. Now, I've learned that to make it easy for people, I tell them that I have a heart disease and that I can't eat any plants. And they accept that because I'm a foreigner, and they just say, well, he's weird. Now, my girlfriend has followed along with me, and she is carnivore. And she gets a lot of questions that people just don't understand it. They can't get it. And that's people she's known all of her life, from childhood. And decades and decades of friendships, and they just can't get behind it. So they give her real strange looks. They just accept me as weird.
That's very similar to my experience in Japan. Like in Japan, it's, oh, he's just a foreigner, whatever. They do
Hmm.
weird things. But yeah, I mean, if my wife was ever to decide to go carnivore, it would just be so difficult.
Yeah.
Or she'd just get questioned and made fun of and stuff. So it's
Yep.
just, yeah.
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 The good news is, as we started off the conversation, is that the people here are generous. They're nice people. The Filipino culture is a very, very loving, generous culture. And I've lived in multiple cultures, so I can have things to compare it to. And so the people, while they think she's weird, they don't give her too hard a time. So that's a good part.
Nice. So you've reversed your diabetes,
Hmm.
and you've lost weight. Of course, I guess you've got a lot of energy if you're in the gym every day.
Hmm.
What other things have improved for you in the time you've been doing this?
Oh, yeah, a lot of things have improved. Um, and let me say that I'm absolutely confident that when I do get that CT scan, the scores are going to be really, really solid. I'm just 100% confident that those scores are going to be what I need them to be. So I have no fear at this point of that heart event or that first heart attack. I have zero fear of that. Now I may be proven wrong, of course, but tests don't guess. But so that, yeah, that. All right. So wrapping that up, what else has happened? Well, yeah, my energy. I have more energy, which is hard to believe because I had so much energy when I just got rid of the seed oils and the sugars and the processed food. But I actually have a lot more energy. I'm going to be 74 in a couple of weeks, and I work as hard as anybody I know, harder than most. I work now. I'm fairly new in the gym, so I'm not lifting as heavy because I'm trying to do stuff. But I'm working as hard as anybody else in that gym, and a lot of them are young people. I have energy all day long, and that's huge. For my age. Um, Adding muscle. Now I'm really good at losing weight. I know how to, and I know how to keep it off permanently. I figured that nut out, not only for myself but other people. But adding muscle, no, that was completely out of my wheelhouse, and it's been real easy to add muscle. That's another thing. It doesn't show it. I don't know if I can turn and let's see. You can see my hair is the traditional coloring. You get gray, and then you get this little darker in the sides and the back. If I could turn all the way around, I won't. But it's fairly dark in the back. Well, that changed. My hair was not that. It was pure white before I went on carnivore. So I don't know if it has a connection or not. It's just one of those oddities. My girlfriend was saying, "Your hair is getting dark. What'd you do?" So that recovery. I say I have energy, but I also have recovery. So if I get tired, I run up some stairs or whatever, I'm back at it very fast. Um, if I have a bad night for whatever reason, something happens and I'm up all night or up late, it's not a problem. I'm good the next day. I feel like I did when I was 30 and 40. I got a bad night's sleep, but I'm okay. Digestion, golly. Um, well, I was cyclical before. I would go for a while, everything would be fine. And then I would go for a while constipated. And then I would go for a while diarrhea. And then I would come back to normal. And that went on for decades, all of my adult life. And I don't deal with that now. I had all the issues when I first went carnivore. Carnivore, I had constipation and diarrhea, but once it settled down, it's just normal, and I don't have any trouble with it. Now I don't go as often as I used to. It's like every 2 or 3 days sometimes, and I'll go in and I'll have a normal bowel movement. It's no big deal, and it's fine. So that's something. This is an adult audience. Everybody I've seen is adult. My sex life has improved. My libido is up, which is lovely. That's a good thing. So yeah, I think that's probably it. But that's a list. I mean, that's a long list of things that at my age, in my 70s, the list is going in the right direction rather than the wrong direction. And I'm on zero medication. I have no meds, nothing.
Yeah, I mean it's a very impressive list. And if you were to package all those things up and some pharmaceutical company could make a drug that would improve all of those things very quickly in a short period of time, they'd make billions of dollars. People just would take that pill like it's going out of fashion, but you don't need to. It's just diet, right?
Right. It's just diet. And that's the thing. I stopped taking medication. I stopped all of that. And, people ask me, back to the longevity thing, just to put that kind of in. Somebody said, hey, you can take this, do this thing, whatever this thing is, take a pill, take this, whatever, and be healthy and live for 10 extra years. And it's affordable. Okay. It's affordable. Okay. Well, what's affordable? Do I have to sell my house? Yeah, you have to sell your house. You need to get that kind of money. Okay, I'll do it. I mean, really, I would do it if I knew I could live 10 more healthy, fully vibrant years. And it's the same thing. If somebody said to me, Jason, you'll be diabetic in another year, and you're going to have 95th percentile chance, 95% chance of being dead in 5 years. And for the price of your house, you sell your house and you take this pill, it'll fix it for you. Would you do it? Where do I sign? Where do I sign? You betcha. Absolutely. I would be standing in line. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well said. So when you were talking about your schedule, you said that where did I write it down? Like you had breakfast, then you go to work and then go to the gym, or you're working in the afternoons? When are you doing?
Depends. My work is that I'm doing face-to-face interviews on
Mm.
Zoom. And so most of the people who I work with are American or English. And so I have Zoom calls at 7 in the morning and the occasional Zoom call at 8 at night because of their schedules. So I will work 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours in the morning, and then have a big break, and then I'll pick it up in the afternoon. It's pretty common for me.
Ah,
And I'm
so
doing a
this
research.
feels like what this feels like work for you, right? It's the same
Actually,
kind of
no,
thing.
no. Yeah, yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, it's,
What kind of work is it you're doing?
well, I'm doing a
What are the
research
methods for?
project. It's a research program, and I'm marrying two things that I've done. I'm that guy, by the way, that doesn't know what he's going to do when he grows up. Yeah, I've managed to get by, but I don't know what I'm going to do. Um, and so when I retired the first time, I started writing books, and I wrote several books, and I've written a couple of books on obesity. And I'll give you the name, but please, 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 nobody go buy them. And I'm serious on that because there's two things wrong with them. One is they're horribly written, and two, the information in there is wrong. Other than that, they're fine. So the research project that I'm doing is on that same thing. I've written the two books on obesity, and this will be the third one on that. The first book was published in 2000, the second book in 2007, but that was the result of work that I got started on in 1980, 79, 80, school year 79, 80. And because I was really, really bad at library research, and that was before the internet, I had to do a paper. It was my first big paper, and I was what was called a returning student, meaning I'd been through the Army and come back out and then was a student. So I was a little older, and just learning how to be a librarian just scared me. So I asked the professor, I said, hey, can I go talk to people in the community? And it was anthropology, it was medical anthropology specifically. And she says, yeah, it's about the methodology, it's not about the place. So I had been reading about obesity, and the idea was that there's a continuity of diet from the farm into the city. So people would bring their old diet, familial diet, into the city and keep eating that heavy food, and therefore they're obese. Well, on my third person, I put out an ad, people responded. I got 24 obese women to talk to me. And on the third woman that I was doing this long, in-depth interview with, she wiped that whole thing out. I was asking her about her family's diet, and this, I'm not going to say any of it, Dave, this string of profanity, and she was furiously mad when we started talking about her family. And it turned out she had extremely high stress childhood. And the only place where she found solace, where she was comfortable, where she was safe, was around the table. So now half of that's important, half of it's not. The stressful childhood it's important, but it doesn't have to be there. Turns out, though, you have to have this continual feeling good around eating. Doesn't matter whether it's at the table or where, but you have to feel good while you eat throughout your childhood years. And that sets up some stuff going on in the limbic system, which is the emotional brain. You know, we have three brains. We think of the brain as one brain, but if you say the digestion system, you can go the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, all these pieces. When you say the brain, you say, okay, well, then there's the cognitive brain, there's the emotional brain, there's the reptilian brain, and each one does a different thing. Just like the stomach is different than the intestine. And so this stuff is set up in the emotional brain, and it creates a compulsive behavior. Briefly, I won't go into why and all that, but compulsions are many orders of magnitude stronger than addiction. If you think of what's a habit, you have a habit. Okay, you can break a habit with a certain amount of effort. Well, how easy is it compared to breaking a real bona fide addiction? Well, it's pretty easy. Some habits easier than others, but the same thing with a compulsion versus an addiction. It's that much harder. And it becomes literally hardwired in the brain. So that's what I ran into. So now my research is how do we heal that part of the brain, and so that the whole compulsive thing, now we think of it, the regular person thinks of it as, it's termed emotional eating. But when you look at this, you say, okay, well, when do you emotionally eat? The person who has this compulsion, they will add large percentages of their body weight, 100 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it is, during these long stress periods, like get a divorce, and they'll put on 100 pounds. Or lose their job, they'll put on 100 pounds. In fact, you had a fella here was it yesterday, that was talking about when he lost his job, he fell off the carnivore diet and gained back over 100 pounds. Don or Dan?
Yeah, Dan.
Dan, yeah. And so he was talking about it, and I thought, well, that fits perfectly, because high stress, all these other issues going on, and you overeat. That's the emotional eating. That's the thing that I've been dealing with. So what I'm doing now is, and I've been at it for 2 years, by the way. This is, I'm wrapping it up. I'm in the last pieces of it. Doing these interviews, and there's a therapy that goes with it. So it's not just an interview, it's a therapy. And the therapy is called havening. And it'd be real easy for me to go way down that path. But the bottom line is, if you stimulate certain skin areas, the face, the hands, the sides of the arms, you will create delta wave in the brain. And when you first hear that, I said, wait a minute, that's kind of crazy. Just look at your hands. The skin on the bottom is very different than the skin on the back. And it makes sense. You say, wait a minute, there's going to be different nerve endings in here than there will be here. So if I stimulate this, nothing happens in my brain. If I stimulate this, delta wave gets created. And for those of you who are stubborn and say that's completely nonsense, think of genitalia. You stimulate that, eventually something else happens. And you can rub your nose all day long and nothing like that's ever going to happen. So we have nerve endings and different kinds of nerves in the body. So when we do this, it's called depotentiation, and we can change the hardwiring in the brain. And so I have been doing this, and I've had up to 46 people active at one time. So that's 46 hours of active interviewing and doing the havening process. And so, and I'm wrapping up. I'm down to about 6 people right now. And so putting it all together is write the book, write the science papers, which I have to get help on because I'm a horrible scientific writer. I am horrible at that. So I would never get it accepted by the worst journal if I do the writing. But I've got all the data. And then, of course, I'm putting, not of course, but I am putting together an affiliate program for people who want to do the program once it's all set up and done. So there's videos that have to be done. It's a bucket of work.
And sorry, just to clarify, what is it? Is it called havening? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes, like a safe haven. That's what they call it as a street name, just so you can, rather than neural, long-term potentiated neural pathway depotentiation. that's what it is.
I like havening better. I like havening better.
Right, a whole lot better. But yeah, so it's there's a lot, these neural names. EMDR is another one that people use for healing trauma. By the way, havening its niche is trauma. That's where it works. I'm applying it to a whole new area, so I'm an outlier within that group. But EMDR, which is part of the American Psychiatric Association, it is the accepted, approved therapy, and they're creating delta wave, same thing in the brain, but they do it by moving the eyes laterally back and forth. Hold your head still, move your eyes all the way one way, all the way the other way, back and forth, and that creates this delta wave. Well, EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprogramming. Try to say that out of much. So yeah, havening works for me too. Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about that or get in contact with you, do you have a website, or do you have some kind of blog or YouTube channel where they can get in contact?
Right now, they don't. I don't. Now, let me answer both questions there, because if somebody says, "Hey, that's an interesting topic, and is it what can I got trauma in my life, I need to work on it," then you would go to havening.org, and there's practitioners worldwide. I'm on there, my bio is there, what have you. But because I'm doing all research, I'm doing pure research right now, and I'm not at the place in the program where I want it to be public. The website's not online. I have a YouTube channel. It has nothing on it. I'm sorry to be a teaser and not tell people where to get in touch with me, but I'm just simply not ready for that at this point. So, yeah.
No worries. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Jason, and I'd really like you to, once this is further along, and also once you have your result heart scan you're going to have in the States, I really would appreciate you coming back on to talk about it.
I'd love to. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. I know I'm in very good company.